Chapter 3: The Yachtsman. The storm arrived earlier than expected. It rolled in from the Atlantic with the slow inevitability of something ancient and practiced, gathering itself in the distance before unfurling across the horizon. By the time the first fishing boats noticed the shift in the wind, the sky had already begun to bruise. The sea, which had been calm enough to reflect the faintest hint of dawn, turned restless, its surface rippling with a warning that only those who lived by it could read. Arthur Janvier read it immediately. He stood at the helm of his small yacht, L'Étoile Filante, watching the clouds thicken like ink spreading through water. The wind tugged at the lines, impatient, urging him toward shore. He had been planning to anchor farther down the coast near a sheltered inlet he preferred, but the sea had other ideas. It often did. He adjusted the sails, guiding the boat toward the nearest harbor. The coastline here was jagged, unforgiving, shaped by centuries of storms that had carved their will into the stone. Arthur knew these waters well enough to respect them. He had learned long ago that the sea did not negotiate. As he approached the harbor, he saw the flashing lights first, blue and white, cutting through the mist like signals from another world. Police vehicles, several of them. Parked near the cliff path that led to a house he had passed many times but never approached. Birkin House. He had always thought it looked like a place that kept its own counsel. He moored the yacht with practiced efficiency, tying the lines with hands that moved from memory rather than thought. The wind whipped at his coat as he stepped onto the pier, the boards slick beneath his boots. The storm was gathering strength, the air thick with the metallic scent of rain. He was heading toward the harbor master's office when he saw her. A woman stood at the edge of the pier, her dark coat snapping in the wind, her hair pulled back in a way that suggested practicality rather than vanity. She was staring out at the water, not with fear, but with calculation, as though the sea were a puzzle she intended to solve. Arthur slowed. He recognized that posture. It belonged to someone who had seen too much and learned to carry it quietly. She turned her head slightly, sensing him before she saw him. "Rough morning to be out," Arthur said, his voice steady despite the wind. Her gaze flicked over him. Boots, coat, hands, eyes, assessing, measuring, filing away details with the precision of someone trained to notice what others missed. "You came in just ahead of the storm," she said. "Barely. You're a yachtsman." "Among other things." She didn't smile. He hadn't expected her to. "I'm Capitain Nesrine Boudaoud," she said. "Police." He nodded. "Arthur Janvier." Her eyes returned to the water. "You know these tides?" It wasn't a question. Arthur stepped beside her, following her gaze. The sea churned below, the waves slapping against the rocks with increasing force. Farther along the coast, the cliffs rose sharply, their edges jagged and treacherous. "I know them well enough," he said. "Then you know what the tide does to footprints on a private cove." He looked at her more closely now. There was something in her voice, something controlled, but edged with urgency. "What happened?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched the waves crash against the rocks, as though waiting for the sea to speak first. "Someone arrived by water," she said at last, "and someone left the same way." Arthur exhaled slowly. He had suspected as much. "The marks on the rocks," he said. "I saw them from the water. Fresh." Nesrine turned to him fully now, her eyes sharp. "You saw them?" "Yes." "And you didn't think to report it?" He met her gaze without flinching. "I didn't know what I was looking at. Not until now." She studied him for a long moment, weighing the truth of his words. Arthur held her gaze unbothered by the scrutiny. He had nothing to hide, or at least nothing relevant to her case. Finally, she nodded. "Walk with me." He followed her along the pier, the wind pushing against them like a living force. The path led toward the cliff road, where the police vehicles were parked. Officers moved in and out of the house, their faces pale, their voices hushed. Arthur stopped at the gate. Birkin House loomed above them, its shutters closed, its walls streaked with rain. It looked less like a home and more like a witness. Nesrine watched him take it in. "You've seen the house before," she said. "From the water," he replied. "It always looked lonely." Lonely, she repeated as though testing the word. "That's one way to put it." She led him toward the back of the house where the cliff path descended toward the private cove. The wind howled around them, carrying the scent of seaweed and something colder beneath it. Arthur crouched near the rocks, running his fingers along the grooves carved into the stone. "Small boat," he said. "Lightweight. Probably a dinghy or a tender. Could it have come from a yacht?" "Easily." "And left again?" He nodded. "Before the tide turned." Nesrine's jaw tightened. "Then they planned this," she said. "Every detail." Arthur straightened, brushing the salt from his hands. "What happened in that house?" he asked quietly. She looked at him, and for the first time he saw something flicker behind her composure. Fatigue, perhaps, or the weight of what she had seen. "5 bodies," she said, "arranged around a table, as though waiting for someone." Arthur felt the wind cut through him. "And the 6th?" he asked. Her voice was barely audible over the storm. "Missing." They stood in silence, the sea raging below, the house looming above, the storm closing in around them. Arthur Janvier had not intended to come ashore that morning. He had not intended to become part of anything. But the tide had brought him here, and the tide rarely made mistakes. Nesrine turned toward the house. "Come inside," she said. "I need your eyes on something." Arthur followed her without hesitation. Behind them, the sea crashed against the rocks, erasing the last traces of the boat that had come and gone in the night.